One of the things that kids need to be able to do in 3D Studio Max is to animate, at least in the beginning level, they need to at least be able to animate a camera. And one of the easiest ways to animate a camera is to create a camera from the viewport that you're already in. So right now I'm in this viewport here, right? To create a camera from this viewport, all you do in 3D Max is you hit Control C. And notice I just created a camera. Here it is, physical camera. And here it is in the modifier stack. And here are its parameters or its settings. If I switch to another viewport, like this viewport, you'll be able to see the camera. Here it is. Okay? To look through this camera, I can go to the viewport name, top in this case, and select camera, physical camera 1. And there it is. I'm looking through the camera now. I'm in wireframe because that is the display mode that was in the last viewport I was in, which is the top viewport. Now, if I look at this viewport, if I look at this camera in another view, I'm just going to hit L on my keyboard to switch to the left viewport. You can see the camera here as well. There it is. And you can see, based on its orientation here, that it's facing this way, and this is up for it. So, a couple things I want to show you about this camera. This is called a physical camera, and the reason it's called a physical camera is because it tries to act like a camera would in real life. Now, this camera is a target camera because it has an object out here called the target that the camera is going to look at no matter where it goes. See, it's pivoting around the target. Now, if I switch back to 4 viewports, here is my camera view, and I move this camera like I just did in another viewport, you can see I'm moving the view. I can also move the target, and the camera is going to continue looking at the target. I think I'm going to put this camera down on the ground a little more and have the target look at the tower. Actually, I think I'm just going to have it look about right there. Now, this is what my camera is seeing. If I want to animate this camera, I can do that a couple of different ways. But before you animate a camera, what you should do is set your render settings and set up safe frames, because this view here, even though this looks like what my camera sees, is not necessarily what my camera is seeing. So I'm going to turn on safe frames, and safe frames can be found when you click on the viewport name right here, show safe frame. This is what the camera is going to see. All right. Notice it's not going to see this or this. Anything outside this area it's not going to see. Now, this dimension of this safe area comes from the render settings. And the render settings are under the rendering menu, render setup, right here. Rendering, render setup. If I come down here to the output size group right here, you can see that it's set to 640 by 480. That is what this aspect ratio or renderable area is. If I pull down this pull-down menu here and select another preset like HD TV, which is what I usually have my kids work in, now notice the renderable area changed. This looks like more like what you would see on your television. So I always have my kids stay in an HD format. And I usually have them render at least 1280 by 720. Now, the reason I do that is because I like to make highlight videos of what my kids create. If they give me anything less than 1280 by 720, I can't use it in a video that I can then show on a television. Does that make sense to you all? Okay. Also, notice under my time output group here, I am only rendering a single frame. If I want to render more than that, I have to set up a range of frames, or I have to say I want to render the active time segment, which in this case is 0 to 100. I can add more frames in my timeline by right-clicking on the play button. Brings up the time configuration tools, and I can change that end time to 200. And now I have more frames on my timeline, and my active time segment now says 0 to 200. And I'm using the Arnold renderer, and I'm going to render the physical camera right here. So far, so good. Now, how do we animate a camera? One of the easiest ways to animate a camera, there's two really easy ways to do it. The first way is to make sure you're in the camera view in one of your viewports. And then what you need to do is turn on Auto Key and move your playhead forward some distance. Then while you're still in the camera view, you have it selected, use the navigation tools such as the dolly tool to dolly the camera in and have it, and you can also animate the target a little bit here to keep it framed on what you want it to look at. And then you can also, if you're still in the camera view here, you can just use your middle mouse button to move the camera, and you can see it's moving here, right? Every time I move it in the camera view, I'm moving the camera. Then when I turn on Auto Key, notice I've created two keyframes now, one here and one here for that motion. And now I have an animated camera. If I click play, you can see that's what I got. Now, if I select the camera again, here's its keyframes. I can take this keyframe, I can click on it, and move it further out to make that zoom slower. Or even slower. So that is how you animate a camera. Another way you can animate a camera is by having it do a carousel around an object to display the object. Now the way you do that is I'm going to have it do that for the tower here. So I'm going to select the tower, and then I'm going to switch from the camera view to the perspective view. So I'm not moving the camera anymore, see? And I'm going to right click and hide everything else in the scene. Oops, except the camera. I didn't want to hide the camera. There we go. And now I'm going to make it so that the camera rotates around the tower and shows how the tower looks. First thing you need to do is align the target of the camera with the tower. Remember the align tool we use right here. if I select the target and select the Align tool and then click on the tower, it's going to align. If I do it in all axes, it's going to align perfectly. It's going to perfectly center the camera target around the, it's going to perfectly center the camera target on the tower. So now, if I move the camera around, you can see it's going to perfectly rotate around the tower. I can also move the camera target up so that it will look at the tower a little better. And I'm going to go ahead and switch to the camera view right now so I can see what that looks like. And then I'm going to move the camera up a little bit and maybe move the target down so I can see the whole tower, or up a little bit more. Move it closer. Okay, so now I'm going to have the camera rotate around the tower to show what the tower looks like. To do that, I'm going to create a path. I'm going to create a circular path around the tower. So I'm going to go to the Create tab. I'm going to use the top viewport. I'm going to select the top viewport and hit Alt-W to expand it. And then I'm going to switch from geometry to shapes, and I'm going to create a circle spline by clicking circle. Then I'm going to click on the tower and click and drag a circle to about where the camera is, like so. Then I'm going to right click to turn off creation mode. Now, to make sure that my camera follows my circle perfectly and around my tower, I'm going to align the circle, going to align the circle to the tower just like I did the target. So I have the circle selected. I'm going to get the Align tool and I'm going to click on the tower. And that aligned the circle to the tower. Now, to make the camera follow the circular path here, I need to constrain it to the path. To do that, I select the camera, and then I go to Animation, Constraints, Path Constraint. And to see this dotted yellow line here, this dotted line, it's telling me what do I want. It's asking me what do I want to constrain the camera to. I want to constrain it to this path. So I'm going to click the path. And now the camera is constrained to the path. And there's a keyframe now here at 0 and here at 200. So now when I play this, watch, the camera is going to follow the path. But see where my target is? My target is not centered on my it's not centered on my tower anymore. So I need to stop my playing, select my target, and there are keyframes on my target from before. So I need to delete those. And now let's see if it works. And now the target stays centered on the tower, and the camera follows the circular path. Now, what does that look like? Well, let's see. Here's the camera view. Let's expand it and play. And that's what it looks like. And this is a pretty typical way to exhibit your work. Just have a camera rotate around it, constrained on a path. Now, do you guys want me to show you how to render this and make it into a video?
Yes, please.
Okay. Not going to have a whole lot of time for After Effects, but I guess it's just the way it is. So to render this into a video, and I also need my windows back. So I'm going to unhide all and select all of my objects. Ooh, no. I need to switch to perspective view because I'm in the camera view. Perspective. So I'm going to hide these objects. Instead of hiding unselected, I'm just going to hide all these objects. Hide selection. There you go. There. All right, so back to the camera view. So now I'm going to render this camera view and assemble it into a video. So the best way to render from 3D Studio Max is, of course, remember we also need lights, right? So it's not going to look like much if I don't have lights in here. So I need to go to lights and I need to create a skylight. Remember from our standard light list, we did this last time. And I need an Omni light. The skylight needs to be 0.5. Needs to have shadows turned on. It needs to be 10. For this particular case, the Omni light, where is the Omni light? It's here. And it needs to be moved up. And it has shadows turned on, and its intensity needs to be 0.5 as well. All right, to render this out as a, actually let me also put a shadow plane in here. Create tab, geometry, plane. And I'm just going to make it the default white here. All right, so now we have a plane on which to cast shadows. So I'm going to switch to high quality to make sure that that looks good. And it does. It looks just fine. Now I could also change, I think I'm going to change my environment color. Remember we did this last time too. Rendering environment. Click the little swatch, brings up the color picker. Okay, so I can now render this. So now I have it set up to render. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to rendering, render setup. And I have it set to render the active time segment. I have it set to render in HDTV mode, which is 12, and I have it set 1280 by 720. And the last thing I need to do before I start rendering is under render output here, I need to click the files button. And I need to tell 3D Max where I want it to put the frames that I'm getting ready to render. It's going to default to the render output folder of the current project folder, which is this folder here, 3D Max 2021. I can create a new folder by clicking right here. I'm going to name this frames 01. I'm going to name this file that I'm going to create Castle. And importantly here, I'm going to select JPEG. And you'll see why in just a minute. Then I'm going to click Save, and it's going to ask me about the quality of my JPEG. I'm going to make it the maximum. And now I have this set up. So now I can begin to render. To do that, I simply click the Render button, but before I do, I want to make sure I'm in the camera view, and I am. So it doesn't take forever to render. I'm going to select my skylight and change the shadow quality to like 5. Otherwise, it'll take a very long time to render. Okay, so I'm going to click Render, and it's going to begin to render each frame. Now it's blue because the background is blue, and I set it up to be that way. And it's using Arnold to render. And I know it doesn't look like it's moving much, but it is. It's rotating slowly. You'll see the door come into view in just a minute. Now I'm going to go ahead and let this render for a little while. And in the meantime, y'all have any questions? Because we need some frames to work with here. But you can see the render status menu here. It's telling you that it's rendered, 18 frames, and it's this far from being finished.
Mr. Flint,
Yes.
right before you hit render, the button, you said something about shadow needs to be 5. Do you remember saying something like that?
I do.
Shadow?
I do. And
Was it 5 or a different number?
well, I changed it to 5. It was 10.
Oh, it was 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
But huh?
Was 5 darker or 5 lighter?
A lower number in that setting has to do with the quality of the shadows generated by the skylight. So
Okay.
a setting of 5 is going to generate low resolution shadows, which are going to look kind of grainy
Right.
and noisy.
Okay.
A setting of 20 would produce very high resolution shadows, but it would take a very long time to render.
Okay.
So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make sure it doesn't take forever to render this. So that's why I lowered that setting.
And also, there's another question. That's when you set up the camera. You said something about high quality. Where did you find that high quality when you set up the camera?
When I set up the camera, I said something about high quality.
Maybe not there. Let me see. Right before you said render environment, we need to render environment before you said the sky to be blue.
Yeah.
Something about high quality. I don't remember.
I don't either. After we get about halfway through this, I'll revisit that and we'll see if I can remember.
Okay, thank you.
High quality. Oh, I remember. That was when you select JPEG. JPEG is a lossy compression algorithm, which
Yeah.
means what that means is that when it compresses an image file, it eliminates some data, and so you can select how low the quality, and that affects the quality of the image. You can select how low the quality of the image can be. So when you select JPEG, it asks you, what do you want the quality of this image to be? Do you want the file size to be big and the quality to be high, or do you want the file size to be small and the quality to be low?
Okay.
I'll show you again when this is about halfway done.
The reason I ask that because some students choose to save their files on the thumb drive.
Mm-hmm.
Thumb drive is limited.
That's true.
So for those students, do we tell them to choose it's not critical? Because
Well,
for the ones who want to save this for long term on their thumb drive.
uh, Well, that's kind of a judgment call because we're going to use these frames here to make a video.
Oh, so maybe they should just use the school's OneCloud.
Yeah,
Okay.
and maybe they'll take. Well, you'll see when we get done. When we get about halfway through this, I'll show you what this results in, and maybe that'll help. We can talk about that.
All right. Thank you.
And we can also see how much space these frames take up by doing that. So.
Right. There's a one question about Unit 4 video culminating video project. Does it really have to be 1 minute long?
No. Remember, you have flexibility.
Okay, because I noticed that the lightsaber video I saw from your students, some of them on 10 seconds.
Right. That's because that was not a culminating project for a video unit. That was the culminating project for the After Effects unit. So all we were trying to do is create a little small video with After Effects, and that was just. And remember, that was when this course was SciViz, and I just was doing that because I wanted to. Your culminating project for the video unit can be a video with a digital effect and animated titles and whatever you deem that to be. I mean, it can be as long as you want. You can have the whole class work on it. It can be as short as you want. You can have each individual student work on it. You don't want to spend too much time on it because you just don't have that much time to begin with, I had my kids do when we were quarantined. I had them do video portraits for that unit, and a video portrait is just where you go and you hold the camera on somebody and you talk to them, and you just get them to sort of react. And it's not really. I'll show you an example when we get done, but it's a really good way to make a video and not have it be too involved. Like they could do video portrait of 3 different people or something if they want to. I'll show you the assignment in Canvas when we're.
So really, the culminating project can be a group project, right?
It could be.
Could be. Okay. So that portrait, that video portrait you just described, that sounds like an interview on camera.
It's not an interview because nobody's talking.
Oh, nobody's talking.
No, there's no sound. I'll show you what it looks like when we get about halfway through this. I want to have about 50 frames so I can show you what it looks like when you assemble it. Otherwise, it'll be so short you won't be able to see anything. Actually, I'll have 100 frames in just a couple minutes. Almost there. Now, notice how fast my computer is rendering. Your school computers will not render this fast. I promise you. The computer I have at home is made for game design and CGI work. It's not a school computer. I had it custom built, so it's a really good machine. One more, and we'll be halfway. All right, so I'm going to cancel this and stop that right there. And I want to show you a couple of things. So that resulted in (100) JPEGs being rendered to the 3D Max project folder under Scene Assets Images. No, not there. Under Render Output, my bad. Here, I didn't choose the folder I made like a dummy. So here are all the frames, and you can see them right here, see? Now, this folder now is 33 megabytes, Tina. So you were asking, so
Yeah.
I would assume that if they wanted to save, 200-300 frames, it'd be, 50 megabytes, maybe 75 at highest quality. Now, to assemble this into a video, what you do is notice that these are numbered in sequence, 00 to 100 or 99. Now, the reason we render this way, instead of rendering straight to video, we could choose a video format in Render Setup and render straight to video. All right? But the reason we do it this way is for two reasons. First of all, I have all these frames, and I can send any one frame to anybody anytime I want and show people what I've done. I can also, when you render, sometimes rendering takes a long time, right? If you're rendering like, 1,000 frames, it's going to take a long time. It's going to take way longer than a class period. So in 3D Max, you can stop at the end of class, and in Maya too. As long as you're rendering frames instead of rendering straight to video, you can stop at the end of class and then pick up where you left off the next day. To do that, you open up your project and you click this box here under the Render Output group in Render Setup. Skip existing frames. So now when I start rendering again, it's going to go straight to frame, see it, 100, and pick up right where it left off. And just go forward. Now, the downside of this is if you change anything about your file, like if you decide, oh, gee, I wanted to fix the lighting over here, and you change that, you can't skip existing frames because then you're going to want to overwrite all your frames because you made a change. You understand what I'm saying?
Okay.
Okay, so the other reason we render frame by frame instead of straight to video is when we are going when we're using this to make a video, we're going to use Premiere Pro, and I'll show you. I'm starting up Premiere Pro right now.
Okay.
And we could use After Effects for this as well. But Premiere Pro is a better option. It's just, anyway, I'm going to click New Project. I'm going to name it Castle Tower, because that's what it is. You got to note where it's going, right? Right now it says it's going into some folder called Rocket Project. I don't want it to go there. But I'm just going to browse, and I'm going to click my Documents folder and select that. So that's where this project file is going to be. I'm going to click OK, and that's going to bring up my workspace in Premiere Pro. When your kids start up Premiere Pro, they're automatically going to be in this workspace, the Learning workspace, which lists a whole bunch of tutorials over here that can teach you how to use Premiere Pro. All right? Once they've watched these, if they want to watch them, then they need to switch to the Editing workspace, which is all the workspaces, pre-made workspaces are up here along the top. This is the one that they should work in. Now, to make my video, I need to import those frames as an image sequence. Okay, to do that, you click File, import and you find those frames that you made, here they are, and you click once on the first one. Don't double click it because that'll then import that one frame. You click once on the first one, and then you check this box here that says image sequence right here. Image sequence. Now once you do that and click open, it will import that as a video clip. See, right here. So now I'm going to drag that into my timeline, and I can click play. And that's what it looks like. See? Now, what I have my kids do usually is add titles at the end to say, project, Castle Project, Charles Flint, DDA 1, October 2021. Do you want me to show you how to do that? I can show you how to animate them too.
Yes, please.
All right.
How do you?
Okay, so what we do is I usually have them do a fade in and a fade out. Here's the video clip in the timeline. So I'm just going to drag it forward a little bit to give myself a little space before the clip starts. And then I'm going to play. I'm going to use my left and right arrow keys, which advances one frame. And I'm going to find that first frame of that clip, which is right there, using my left, right arrow keys, right? So that's the first frame of the clip. I'm going to select the clip, and then up here on the left-hand side, I have a series of tabs here along the top. The one I want to work in right now is Effect Controls. So when I select the clip, the controls for that clip appear here. I want to animate the opacity of this clip. I want it to fade in. So to fade in, I need to start at 0% opacity. Here's the opacity setting. So I'm going to click that number and make it 0. See, and it went away because it's totally transparent, right? That's what opacity means. Now I want it to fade in. I want it to gradually change from 0 to 100%. So to do that, I need to make it animatable. And to make it animatable, I click this little watch here. And that creates a keyframe, which you can barely see right here at the very beginning of the clip. Any parameter with a watch by it is animatable. It's the same thing in After Effects. All right, you click the watch to make it animatable, and that sets your first keyframe. So I'm going to move forward a few frames. I just moved my time slider and my playhead forward a few frames. I could do it there or I can do it here. Doesn't matter. And then I'm going to change this value to 100. And that creates another keyframe. And this is the result. See, it fades in instead of just blinking in. I want it to play, and then I want it to fade out at the end. So to fade out, I'm going to get towards the end here, and I'm going to set another keyframe right here. To set a keyframe, I click the little keyframe button right here. Boom. See, there's my keyframe. Then I'm going to move to the end of the clip, use my arrow keys to find that last frame right there, and I'm going to change the opacity to 0. And this is the result. Fade in, fade out. And that's much more pleasing than just, blinking in and blinking out. Now, what these keyframes say is start at 0, gradually increase to 100, right? Hold at 100 from here to here, and then from here to here, gradually decrease to 0. And that's what the keyframes are doing. So now,
Okay, thanks. Yeah, thank you.
So now to add titles, I need to be at the end of the clip. And when there's nothing else after a clip. Premiere will stop the playhead at the end of the clip. So I'm going to put animated titles here. I can create those in Premiere Pro. And the way I do that is I go to File, New, Legacy Title, which is right here. And the reason I use Legacy Title is, and all I need to do, I don't need to say anything here, I just need to click OK, is because it has an editor that's just sort of, internal into Premiere Pro. I don't have to go to another program. All right? So to start creating titles, you click in the center of the window and you type. And you can push Enter to go down to the next line. And then you can use your Select tool, which is over here on the left. Here's some tools, and just move it. And up at the top here are some paragraph settings, just like in Illustrator or Photoshop. I'm going to center align this. And then I'm also going to add, I'm going to double click on it to add, actually I'm going to make another, I'm going to add Digital Design 1, October 2021. Now, to center this in the screen area here, there's a tool right here on the left-hand side that centers it in the screen. That centers it horizontally, that centers it vertically. Now it's perfectly centered. I can change the font down here. There's all these preset fonts with preset colors here. Right? I can also change anything about the font here. All these settings here. Here's the color of the font, right here, the fill color. See, I can change that if I want. I can select a certain line of the font, of the text, like these lines here, and make them smaller. The font size is here. See, I can make those smaller if I want. And I can change just this one. I can make that a little smaller if I want. But now, of course, I got to recenter it. You can add all sorts of things in these settings here. Drop shadows, strokes, all sorts of stuff. Here you can change the kerning, which is the space between the letters. You can change the leading, which is the line spacing. And you can just change all sorts of things. I don't really want to change the kerning very much. All right, so now once you've got this like you want it, you can just X out of it because it's auto-saving it the whole time you're working on it. And it created here a JPEG, essentially, of my text. And here it is when I drag it into the timeline. Now I want to show you something. You can see that it is transparent, and it will be over whatever frame you want it to be on. See, it doesn't have to be over just a blank screen. Right? So I'm going to put that at the end. Of my clip here. And so now it's going to do that. But I want this text to be animated. I want it to scroll up from the bottom and then fade out. So to do that, I'm going to find that first frame of the text. It's right there. And I'm now going to animate. I have the text clip selected. I'm going to the Effects Controls tab again. Here it is right here. This time I'm going to animate the position of it. This is the X position. This is the Y position. I could also animate the scale. I could do something like that if I wanted to. See? I could have it come in like that. Whoop, like that if I wanted to. This is the X position. This is the Y position, and this is the X position. So I'm going to start it off screen at the bottom like this. Then I'm going to move forward some. Oh, sorry, my bad. Then I'm going to turn on the animation and set that first keyframe. I forgot that. Now I'm going to move forward some, and I'm going to scroll it up onto the screen and have it stop in basically the center of the screen. And this is what that looks like. If I want to slow it down, I take this keyframe and move it further out. I want it to stay on screen for a little while, and then I want it to fade out. Or I could have it stay on screen and then scroll up. I could have it do just about anything I want. To have it stay on screen and scroll up, I would set a keyframe for the position right here. Now this is a hold frame. This is what this is called. I'm holding it in position between here and here. Then I would move forward and I would scroll it up off the screen. And that created my last keyframe. So this is what that looks like. You could do that, or we could have it fade out. To have it fade out, we're going to animate the opacity now. Notice it's not animated. The watch is not turned on. So to begin animating this, I'm going to turn on the watch because I want to start at 100% opacity. It's already there. So I'm going to scroll forward to the last frame or thereabouts and make the opacity 0. And that creates my last keyframe. So this is what that looks like. There you go. Animation. Yay. Now, to render this out as a video, what you do is you need to tell Premiere Pro that you do not want to render all of this blank space here in your project. If you don't tell it, it'll render all of this. So we want to tell it we want to render just this piece here. So to do that, we need to set an out point right here where the playhead is. We can do that two ways. I can click this little out point symbol here. There, I've set my out point. Or I can right click on the timeline and select Mark Out. Or I can push O on my keyboard. All those three ways set an out point. Now I've told Premiere Pro that I just want to render this part of the timeline. To render, you go to File, Export, Media. And that brings up this window, the Export Settings window. The first thing you need to do is change whatever this says to H.264. That's because that is the dominant video format that is used on the web. And it's plenty quality enough for what we're doing. Then you need to click on the output name. You need to click on it. Select the destination. I'm just going to put it on my desktop and name it something. And click Save. Notice that the file size here is 11 megabytes. We can decrease that by scrolling down in the video settings, which is this tab. These are tabs here, see? We can go into the video settings and scroll down a little bit and find the bitrate settings, which are right here, and change this number from 10 to 5, and that will decrease our file size by half. It does affect the quality at some point, but this is fine for what we're doing. Notice this says right down here at the bottom what I'm rendering is sequence in out. That's why I set that out point. So I could render this just that little bit that I want to render. And then you click export. And it'll export your video. And now that you're exported, you have a video wherever you said to put the video. Here's my video. And that's how you render a video frame by frame using 3D Max and Premiere Pro. Now, the other advantage of doing it this way is that I can render these frames out of Premiere Pro in a multitude of different video formats. Now that I've got this set up, all of these different formats I can use. And that's important because, a lot of times you need to render different formats. Now, if you didn't do that, then you would have to, excuse me, you would have to transcode your video or do something else. Okay? And guess what? We only have 5 minutes left, so we ain't got no time for After Effects. And I apologize for that.
Thank you very much. This is a very complete training today. Thank you.
Well, I hope you guys got something out of it. There's a lot more to look at in Premiere Pro. I don't have any After Effects tutorials that I've made. I haven't done After Effects in a long time with my kids. So I haven't. I think I made a tutorial about the lightsaber thing, but that was a long, long time ago. I wouldn't even know where it is now. But there's a ton of stuff out there on the internet to learn After Effects. For example, if I were just to go to YouTube and go After Effects for beginners, I would find all sorts of stuff. See, here's After Effects Basics. This looks interesting. Now, you can do so much with After Effects that some people, and when they do this basic stuff, are gonna focus on VFX, and some people are going to focus on animating text and that kind of thing. So, you just really don't. You just got to find what you need here. So,
thank you so much, Mr. Flynn.
Well, I'm sorry we didn't have any time for After Effects, and yeah, but I felt like it was important for you guys to understand how to render out of 3D Max and how to set up an animated camera and do that kind of thing, because that's kind of important, right?
It's part of the unpacked content, so we feel we need to cover that and need to teach.
Yeah. Yeah. If they go to take the certification exam, one of the things that for 3D Max, one of the things that they ask you is to be able to constrain a camera to a path, and that's kind of a pretty standard thing that people do with 3D modeling and animation. So anyway, I mean, if you got an animation program, you should be rendering animations, right? Not just JPEG, still, one frame JPEGs all the time. So, and animating the camera is an easy way to get a handle on animation. It's an easier way to get a handle on animation rather than animating objects, because you can animate objects too. Watch this. I'm going to take this thing here. I'm in the camera view. I'll take this tower that we made. I'm going to group everything. And I'm going to animate it taking off. All right, so I'm going to start at frame 0. I'm going to use auto key. I'm going to move forward. And I'm going to move it up out of the frame. And now it's going to take off. And when I click play, shoop, there it goes. Okay. So you can keyframe the motion or rotation, or you can keyframe just about anything in 3D Max. You can keyframe light intensity. You can keyframe the textures. I mean, you can keyframe just about anything. So, yeah. To do the rocket thing like I did with in Maya, you would animate, you would put a squash modifier on here. Let's see if they have one. I'm sure they do. Stretch, same thing. And you would stretch it, see? And we would have to move the stretch gizmo, which is here, to the bottom. And then you would move forward a little bit. I would take this and move this forward just a bit. And then I would move maybe to here, and I would turn on auto key, and I would squash it a little bit. And then I would move forward again, and when it begins to take off, I would stretch it a little bit. And this is what we have. Same idea. It's the same thing we did in Maya with the rocket. Although the timing is off, the speed's off, but I just wanted to show you how to do that. Okay. Any last minute questions? You guys can.
No.
Are we going to get the link to the video soon?
Yes, I will send out a link just like I did last time.
Okay, this one is really helpful. The video at the end, how you stretch to create this animation.
Okay.
Because that really ties well with 3ds Max.
Yeah. Now you can also, you see the keyframes for the squash and stretch are right here, right? So I can take this and move this forward a little bit to speed that up, and move this forward a little bit to speed that up. Then I can also take these two and move them around to sort of play with the timing of it to get it to time better. See, that looks a little better. See? So when I play that, it's timed a little better. You can't do that in Maya as easily as you can in 3D Max, move keyframes around in the timeline. So anyway. All right, so I guess you guys have a great weekend. Now listen, you can email me anytime with any questions you want. If you want me to direct you to something that you were looking for, if you need some advice about something, have a question about an assignment or a technical question at all, just drop me an email and I'll answer you as soon as I can, okay?
I appreciate that. Have a great weekend.
Okay, you too.
Bye.
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 Bye. Bye, everybody.